What happened to the planes lost in time? Mysterious crashes, cryptic messages, and wrecks frozen in ice. Let's discover the truth. In April 1943, a United States Army Air Forces bomber named Lady Be Good disappeared over the endless sands of North Africa. The crew sent a final radio message stating they were low on fuel and struggling to navigate in the darkness. Then, complete silence. The Lady Be Good was simply gone. No wreckage, no trace, no crew. It was as if the desert had swallowed an entire warplane without leaving a clue behind. For years, military teams searched in vain. But then, almost 16 years later in 1958, a British oil exploration team flying over the Libyan desert spotted something unusual gleaming under the blazing sun. They investigated, and there it was, the wreck of the Lady Be Good, astonishingly intact despite the brutal desert conditions. The massive bomber lay in eerie silence, its nose half buried in sand, its propellers still largely in place. It looked as if it had just landed, untouched by time. What truly sent shivers down everyone's spines was what they found inside. Supplies were still there: food, water, a working radio, even survival gear. It was clear the crew had survived the initial crash, but there were no bodies in the wreck. That raised far more questions than answers. If they survived the crash, where did they go? Further searches uncovered a heartbreaking trail stretching across the open desert. One by one, personal items appeared: boots, canteens, scraps of clothing. Eventually the remains of most of the crew were found, suggesting they had tried to walk to safety, terribly underestimating the brutal distances and the deadly heat. To this day, theories swirl around the Lady Be Good. Some say strange navigational errors pulled the plane far off course, almost as if an unseen force led it deep into the sands. Others point to rare atmospheric phenomena called desert mirages, illusions that distort distances and directions. Pilots flying over deserts have long reported seeing shimmering lakes and strange distortions in the air. Could the crew have been chasing a mirage, convinced salvation was just over the next dune? What's even more unsettling is how well the plane itself was preserved. Experts say the dry, scorching desert acted almost like a time capsule, keeping the metal, fabric, and even some paper documents from rotting away. It feels less like a crash site and more like a shipwreck waiting to be discovered, frozen in time. Not all missing planes are found where you'd expect, or even when you'd expect. Take the strange case of Flight 914, a Douglas DC-4 airliner that reportedly took off from New York in 1955, heading toward Miami, only to vanish completely from radar. The aircraft, its crew, and its passengers seemed to disappear into thin air. Search efforts stretched across hundreds of miles. No wreckage surfaced. It was as if the sky itself had swallowed the plane. Then, almost 37 years later, something incredible happened. In 1992, at an airport in Caracas, Venezuela, air traffic controllers reportedly spotted an old, unidentified aircraft suddenly appear on their radars. Confused, they tried to make contact. The pilot responded with calm but puzzling words. He claimed to be Flight 914, still en route to Miami. What's more, witnesses described the plane as being an outdated model, consistent with the DC-4 style from the 1950s, not something anyone would still be flying in the 90s. The story claims that the plane circled, landed briefly, and then, after realizing something was terribly wrong, took off again before authorities could intervene. It supposedly disappeared into the sky just as mysteriously as it had arrived. No clear physical evidence of the event was ever provided, and skeptics argue that it's more legend than fact. Yet the tale persists, passed along by pilots and aviation enthusiasts who swear that strange disappearances in the sky don't always end the way we expect. In January 1921, the Carroll A. Deering, a 5-masted schooner, was found run aground on the treacherous Diamond Shoals off the coast of North Carolina. The ship was battered, but it hadn't sunk. The sails were still set. The galley showed signs of meal preparation, yet not a single soul remained aboard. The entire crew had vanished, leaving behind a ghostly shell of a ship. The Carroll A. Deering had been on a return trip from delivering coal to Brazil. No distress calls had been received, no survivors were ever found. It was as if the crew had evaporated mid-journey. Even more unsettling, personal items, navigational equipment, and lifeboats were missing. It looked like an orderly evacuation. But why, and where did they go? Investigators at the time threw out a long list of theories: piracy, mutiny, rogue waves, even supernatural explanations tied to the nearby Bermuda Triangle. Officially, the cause remains unknown, but one curious detail stands out. Some researchers pointed out that a series of strange radio transmissions were picked up from nearby vessels days before the Deering ran aground. Fragmented messages, hurried voices, hints of trouble, but never a full explanation. Some call it one of the greatest maritime mysteries in American history. Others see it as yet another example of how easily vehicles, whether planes or ships, can cross the thin line between the known and the unknown, often without a trace. And even in our modern world, the vanishing act isn't over. In fact, one of the most famous cases in aviation history, a modern jetliner disappearing without a clear trace, happened not long ago, and its pieces are still haunting the shores today. In the modern age of satellite tracking and global communication, it seems impossible that a full-size passenger jet could just vanish. But that's exactly what happened on March 8, 2014, when Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 disappeared while flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The Boeing 777, carrying 239 people, lost contact with air traffic control less than an hour after takeoff. No distress signals, no emergency beacons, it simply disappeared from the sky. Search teams launched one of the most extensive and expensive recovery operations in aviation history, scouring tens of thousands of square miles of ocean. Yet for years, no trace of the plane was found. Families waited, the world speculated. Some thought the plane had suffered a mechanical failure. Others whispered darker theories about hijacking, secret cargo, or hidden military activities. Even today, no single explanation satisfies all the strange facts. The first real clue came in 2015, when a piece of aircraft debris washed ashore on Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. It was a flaperon, a control surface from the wing of a Boeing 777. Over time, more fragments appeared on beaches across the Indian Ocean. Panels, interior parts, small sections of fuselage, each piece deepened the mystery. How could a plane this large leave so few traces? Flight path models suggest that after losing contact, MH370 veered far off course and flew south until it likely ran out of fuel over open ocean. But why the turn? And why the silence? Some experts point to a sudden decompression or fire, leaving the crew incapacitated. Others believe the turn was deliberate. A controlled ditching has even been suggested, explaining the limited debris field. Whatever the truth, the wreck of MH370 has still not been fully found. Somewhere in the dark, cold depths of the southern Indian Ocean, the rest of the plane lies hidden. Even in our connected world, the sea still guards its secrets tightly, and sometimes it takes decades for answers to finally surface, as the next story proves. In December 1925, the SS Kodapaxi, a large cargo steamship, set sail from Charleston, South Carolina, bound for Havana, Cuba. It never arrived. Radio transmissions hinted at trouble, including reports of the ship taking on water, but after that, silence. No distress signals were ever received. No wreckage was found. The Kodapaxi was simply added to the long list of vessels lost in the infamous Bermuda Triangle. For decades, the ship became a symbol of maritime mystery. Some believed it sank in a sudden storm. Others insisted it fell victim to strange forces said to haunt that patch of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Stories of magnetic anomalies, rogue waves, even supernatural events have long swirled around the triangle. The Kodapaxi's disappearance fit right into the legend. Then almost 90 years later, the mystery finally shifted. Marine archaeologists investigating a wreck off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida, pieced together evidence suggesting the sunken ship was indeed the missing Kodapaxi. Details from the wreck matched blueprints and historical descriptions perfectly. Metal fittings, cargo items, even the ship's layout all lined up with what should have been aboard in 1925. Strangely, the location where the ship was found lies north of its intended route to Havana. How it ended up there remains unclear. Did currents pull it off course? Was the storm that struck stronger than reported? Some suggest navigational errors caused the Kodapaxi to drift helplessly before meeting its fate. Others, still clinging to mystery, argue the area's bizarre reputation might have played a role after all. Even with its physical wreck finally identified, the Kodapaxi's full story remains just out of reach, like so many disappearances tied to the endless sea. Some ships are meant to be forgotten, but the SS Bachimo simply wouldn't let anyone forget about it. Built in 1914, this freighter operated in the Arctic, bringing supplies and trading goods. Until one day, in 1931, it became stranded in the icy waters off the coast of Alaska. The crew abandoned ship after a fierce storm, but they thought the Bachimo would sink soon after. It didn't. Somehow, against all odds, it survived the harsh conditions and remained afloat. But that wasn't the last anyone saw of it. For the next 38 years, the SS Bachimo continued to drift around the Arctic, completely unmanned. Crews from other ships would report sightings of the freighter, floating aimlessly through the ice, as if possessed by some force. At one point, a group of hunters even boarded the Bachimo, hoping to salvage whatever they could, but they were forced to leave again when the ship broke free from the ice and drifted further out to sea. The Bachimo's eerie presence lingered like a ghost of the past, refusing to sink or be claimed by the frozen ocean. In 1969, it was reported again near Point Barrow, Alaska, and after that, the sighting stopped. No one knows exactly when it finally disappeared, but after nearly 4 decades of haunting the Arctic waters, the SS Bachimo finally became just another cold mystery. Some say it sank quietly, lost to time, while others believe it still floats out there somewhere, forever locked in the ice. What's certain is that this ghost ship defied the odds, and its story remains one of the strangest to come from the frozen wilderness of the North. In the summer of 1942, a squadron of P-38 Lightning fighter planes took off from an American air base in Greenland. Their mission? To provide air support for World War II operations in Europe. Unfortunately, the harsh Greenlandic weather got the best of them. Caught in a brutal snowstorm, the pilots were forced to crash land on the icy terrain. While the crews survived, the planes were left behind, their fates sealed under layers of snow and ice. For over 50 years, these aircraft remained lost in the frozen tundra of Greenland, forgotten and buried deep beneath ice that was slowly advancing. But in 1992, a group of explorers and archaeologists using modern technology pinpointed the location of the lost planes. Among them was one that stood out, the Glacier Girl, a P-38 Lightning that had been buried 268 feet beneath the surface. Excavation teams dug through the ice for months, carefully extracting the plane from its icy grave. Remarkably, the Glacier Girl was in astonishingly good condition for its age. The cockpit was intact, the engine could still be turned, and the wings were nearly undamaged. The cold, dry environment had preserved the aircraft so well that it looked almost as if it had just landed yesterday, rather than being buried for decades. The recovery of the Glacier Girl wasn't just a rare historical moment, it was a triumph of determination and technology. After being carefully restored, the P-38 was returned to flight, a living relic of World War II. Its journey from the depths of an icebound grave to the skies once again is a testament to both the resilience of wartime engineering and the stubborn persistence of lost vehicles, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. The Glacier Girl story may be one of the most remarkable recoveries in aviation history, but it's not the only plane waiting under ice. On July 30, 1942, the USS Grunion, a U.S. Navy submarine, lost contact with headquarters. It was supposed to return after completing its mission, but it never did. Despite immediate efforts to locate the missing vessel, no trace of the submarine or its 70 crew members could be found. The Navy presumed it had been lost to enemy fire or that it had sunk due to mechanical failure, but the mystery remained unsolved for decades. For 60 years, the Grunion's location was one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the Pacific theater. But in 2007, using modern sonar technology, a team of researchers led by Abeles' son managed to locate the wreck of the USS Grunion off the coast of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. It was lying 2,600 feet beneath the surface, nearly 100 miles off course from where it was initially thought to have sunk. The discovery of the Grunion's wreckage was a bittersweet moment. There, on the ocean floor, it remained largely intact, a solemn reminder of a crew lost during one of the most dangerous and chaotic times in history. But what made this find particularly eerie was the fact that the submarine's periscope and rudder were still visible, suggesting that it might have been sunk by an unexpected attack from above, or that mechanical failure played a role in its fate. The final moments of the Grunion's crew, whether they were engaged in battle or merely following orders to dive, remain an enduring mystery. Its discovery didn't bring full closure, but it provided the world with a glimpse into the dark depths where history's forgotten vessels often rest. Today, the USS Grunion lies on the ocean floor, waiting for more answers. But one thing is clear: the mystery of lost vessels, whether submerged beneath the sea or buried under ice, continues to capture our imagination. In 1975, a Malaysia Airlines Boeing disappeared during a routine flight between Kuala Lumpur and Sydney. The aircraft lost contact over the Southern Ocean, and despite an extensive search, no wreckage was ever found. The disappearance baffled aviation experts, and the plane was presumed lost forever. Decades passed, until in 2019, a research team drilling for ice cores in Antarctica made an astonishing discovery. Deep beneath the ice, they uncovered the intact fuselage of the missing Boeing. Remarkably, it was almost perfectly preserved, with no signs of deterioration, as though the plane had been frozen in time. The mystery of how it ended up so far south remains unsolved, adding yet another layer of intrigue to one of aviation's most baffling disappearances. On August 2, 1947, a British South American Airways flight, Stardust, disappeared en route from Buenos Aires to Santiago. The aircraft, a Lancaster-based Avro Lancastrian, was carrying 11 passengers, including an experienced crew. Midway through its journey, the plane sent a final cryptic radio transmission, "Stendek." These were the last words heard before the aircraft vanished into the Andean mountains. Search teams scoured the region for days but found no trace. The mysterious message haunted investigators as no one could decipher its meaning or understand why it was sent. It wasn't until 1954, 7 years later, that the wreckage of Stardust was found, high in the Andes. Strangely, the wreckage was almost intact, as if the crash had been a controlled descent rather than a dramatic fall. The pilot's notes indicated that they had flown into dense fog, but the meaning of the Stendek message remained unsolved. Theories range from a technical malfunction to the possibility that the crew had encountered an unrecorded weather phenomenon. Even more eerie was the suggestion that the message might have been some form of distress, almost like a final warning. What remains most puzzling is how the plane managed to remain hidden for so long. Given the difficult terrain of the Andes, finding such a wreck in the vast wilderness was nothing short of miraculous. Yet the question still lingers. Was the strange message Stendek a sign of something far more elusive, perhaps a cryptic plea for help that no one could understand in time? In the mid-1940s, a distress signal was intercepted from a merchant ship called the Orang Madan, a vessel sailing in the South Pacific. The message was fragmented but terrifying. It began with the words, "All officers, including the captain, are dead. The rest of the crew is either dead or dying." Then abruptly the transmission stopped, no further communication followed, and no one ever heard from the ship again. What followed next is nothing short of eerie. A nearby ship, the Silver Star, responded to the distress call and sailed to the Orang Madan's last known location. Upon boarding the ship, the crew of the Silver Star made a gruesome discovery. The ship was completely abandoned, yet the bodies of the crew members were scattered across the deck and in the ship's interior. The most shocking part? All of the bodies were in an unnatural state, their faces twisted in expressions of terror. It was as if they had died in sheer panic. The situation on board seemed impossible. There were no signs of injuries, no obvious cause of death, yet the crew appeared to have been struck down suddenly and without warning. As the Silver Star crew continued to explore the ship, they discovered the bodies of the officers, all frozen in terrifying positions, staring wide-eyed into the distance. Some even speculated that a mysterious toxin could have been responsible for the deaths, though no conclusive evidence was ever found. What truly sent shivers down the spine of everyone who heard the tale was what happened next. As the Silver Star crew made preparations to tow the Orang Madan to port, an explosion occurred on the ship. In an instant, the ship caught fire and sank, disappearing into the ocean without a trace. The Orang Madan's wreck was never found, and to this day, no one knows what really happened to the crew, nor why the ship sank so mysteriously. In 1946, a C-47 Dakota military transport plane went missing over the Swiss Alps during a routine flight. The aircraft, en route to a base in Europe, had been carrying supplies and personnel. The crew had been navigating through low visibility and harsh weather conditions when it lost contact with air traffic control. Despite extensive search efforts, no wreckage was ever found. As years turned into decades, the story of the missing Dakota became one of the Alps' great mysteries, haunting both aviation enthusiasts and local historians. Then, in 1993, something extraordinary happened. A hiker making his way through a remote section of the mountains stumbled across a strange object buried in the snow. At first, he thought it was an old piece of military equipment, but as he got closer, he realized it was the wreckage of an aircraft, the C-47 Dakota. Shocked, he reported his find, and soon a full team of investigators and archaeologists arrived to examine the site. What they uncovered was nothing short of astonishing. A well-preserved C-47, its wings still intact, its fuselage mostly untouched by time. Given the harsh, cold conditions of the Alps, the wreck had remained largely intact, trapped under a thick layer of ice and snow for more than 50 years. The mystery deepened though, as the location of the wreck was nearly 100 miles off course from where the plane was originally believed to have crashed. How had it ended up there? Some experts believe that the heavy snow and shifting winds could have caused the plane to veer off course, or perhaps there was a hidden mountain pass that the crew had been trying to navigate. But despite several theories, the plane's strange final resting place still doesn't entirely make sense. No story of a missing aircraft has captivated the world more than that of Amelia Earhart, the pioneering aviator who disappeared without a trace in 1937. Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, were attempting a historic flight around the world when their plane, a Lockheed Electra, vanished over the Pacific Ocean, never to be seen again. Despite extensive search efforts, no wreckage or debris was ever found, and Amelia's disappearance sparked one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in aviation history. For decades, theories about what happened to her ranged from the plausible to the outlandish: a crash at sea, a navigational error, even capture by the Japanese military. However, in 2018, a group of researchers discovered a shocking new piece of evidence. During an expedition to Niku Island in the Pacific, a site where Earhart is believed to have crash-landed, the team uncovered pieces of metal that appeared to be from a 1930s-era aircraft. After thorough analysis, it was determined that the fragments closely resembled parts from Earhart's Lockheed Electra. This discovery revived the hope that Earhart's fate might finally be understood. Some experts believe that after running out of fuel, Earhart and Noonan attempted an emergency landing on Niku, a small, uninhabited island in the South Pacific. Evidence from past expeditions suggested that they may have survived for a time on the island, using whatever resources they could find. The island's remote location and the challenging terrain likely made it impossible for the two aviators to escape or signal for help. But the mystery still isn't fully resolved. While the new evidence is compelling, it only adds to the enigma surrounding Amelia Earhart's disappearance. That's about it. Which story impressed you the most? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.